and welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. First, I want to extend a really warm welcome to all of my new listeners joining me today. I want to thank you for tuning in, helping me grow my show, giving it some more exposure, reaching a larger audience. Your support really does mean the world to me, and it helps me keep this expanding on to other people who probably need to hear some of this information, at least to help them out when they're going through the lifestyle, or maybe answer some of those questions that they're looking at or that they face on the emotional plane. So if you do enjoy what you hear, maybe you want to consider supporting the show through the donation link that I have on my Spotify profile. Anything large or small is really helpful. It allows me to continue to deliver these episodes, line up some guests, and, keep everything moving forward. So today, I want to dive into a topic that a lot of people do face, but it's kind of tricky to navigate. And that's when we know somebody, or there's a couple that we may be friends with that are either going to go through a divorce, or maybe their dynamic is coming to the end, especially when we're starting to look at the context of the lifestyle here. Now, divorce can be one of the most challenging transitions we face, and it's not just because the couple going through that is feeling the impact. Their friends, their family, and even some of the bigger lifestyle communities can be affected, because there's often feeling of, unsure of how to offer maybe support or what to say in really a complex time. And because this transition can be filled with grief or anger or even sometimes relief, for many it can feel like their entire world is shifting, and that sense of instability can create a ripple effect that impacts everybody involved. So when we talk about relationship dynamics, especially in the context of the lifestyle, things do get a little bit more intricate. Now, whether it's maybe polyamorous or it's a BDSM dynamic where the DS is going to stop, or any other form of maybe consensual non-monogamy, the stakes can even feel oftentimes higher. These dynamics require additional layers of communication and understanding, and it does make it crucial for everybody that's kind of involved to really navigate these relationships with care and how all of these things are going to work out. Now, if we understand how to support those people going through these difficult times, whether it's a divorce or a shift in the dynamics, or, some sort of other issue that they're facing, it's really important for us to approach it with a lot of care and empathy. It's more about it's not just offering a shoulder to cry on. It's about recognizing the time that their experiences, and knowing how to create a space for these people to feel comfortable in and express their emotions to us. Now, it's equally important that establishing clear boundaries, it's kind of what I like to call the rules of disengagement. Now, these rules help us ensure that the process remains as respectful as we can. And it does allow everybody involved to maintain their dignity, even when the emotions are really running high at times. So whether you're a friend or a family member or somebody navigating your own dynamic, I'm hoping that today's conversation is going to offer you some insights into how we navigate these turbulent waters with a little bit of compassion, some care, and definitely some understanding. So let's kind of dive right into this. First, let's really understand the whole divorce process, or maybe even the ending of a relationship dynamic. Now, whether it's a dynamic that's coming to an end, or it's you're facing the causeway of divorce, these can give us a roller coaster of emotions. And let's really be honest here, it's not just a legal matter. It's a massive shift in our lives, and that can bring a ton of feelings to the surface. Now, it's really important to recognize that everyone involved will experience their own unique blend of emotions. This can include, like I said before, grief or anger, relief, the fear of the unknown, uncertainty, pettiness, right? So if we're looking at some of these feelings, when I'm talking about what do I mean by grief? How do we grieve something? Well, grief isn't just reserved when we're talking about death or the passing of someone. When a marriage or maybe a significant relationship ends, it's more than just losing a partner. It's losing that part of the dream that you built together. And you're just not mourning the loss of the relationship, but any of those plans that you had, family vacations, anniversaries, everything in between. And it's completely normal to feel overwhelmed by this sense of loss. It's okay to grieve here. It's a really vital part of moving on. Now, sometimes we have to make sure we have a plan, and we have to understand how we navigate and figure out our next steps. Sometimes we can set grief aside and work on our safety plan of where we are going to transition to. Other times, something like anger can arise. Now, anger can bubble up during this time, whether it's, maybe you're feeling betrayed or a severe disappointment. Now, maybe you feel frustrated during the whole discussions about your finances, or you're resentful over the unfairness of the breakup. Either way, you have to acknowledge this anger is it's present, but it's a valid response to feeling hurt. And you have to let yourself feel this emotion, because it's part of the whole healing process. And I want to say this: people give anger a lot of they don't give it their fair share of credit. Anger is a very necessary part of the emotional grieving process, or the emotional process when something ends, because we're going to start to realize some of the things that we gave up, especially maybe if the dissolution of the relationship is coming and it kind of blindsides us, right? So don't let people tell you you can't be angry or you shouldn't be angry. There is more than enough psychology to back the reasons why it's necessary, and the processing that it allows us to feel. Now, on the flip side, there are going to be some people who might experience some relief. Now, if maybe the relationship became more of a burden than it was a blessing. And this tends to come when, all relationships, I like to look at them as they are their own entity. They have to evolve, they have to grow. And that has to be cultivated by both partners. It doesn't matter if the dominant or the submissive or the husband or the wife or whatever is in between is not doing their share. We can start to feel like we are evolving past our partners. So sometimes for us, the relationship becomes and starts to feel like it's more really like a burden that we're just kind of dragging along. So when the end finally arrives, it's more like breathing that first bit of fresh air. And this relief just isn't real. It's just as real as grief when you go through this. It becomes this whole opportunity to rediscover yourself, maybe find your independence again. And truly, this part can be really empowering to us. But then there's this last part, fear. And when we do this and we experience this emotion, what happens here is it becomes the unknown, and it's all of these bigger questions that are out there. Will I be okay? What's my future going to look like now? Can I make it on my own? All of these things that we're facing. This can create a little bit of anxiety that can be at times paralyzing. We have to be able to confront these fears instead of letting them control us. We have to acknowledge them and, maybe help us, figure out how we are going to deal with the uncertainties ahead. It's okay not necessarily to have a plan and to be a little bit nervous and a little bit scared. That is absolutely 100% normal. But you have to take that into account. You don't want to sit with fear forever and then let it control you, so you start making choices that aren't necessarily the best for you. Now, all of this does have an impact when, there's families involved and not just the individuals that are involved. Divorce and when relationships, especially long-term relationships, it's no longer just a couple's issue. It affects everybody in your remote orbit. Your friends, maybe people at work that you've hung out with, your family, or if you have kids. So I kind of want to start there. What happens, what if I'm with somebody, we're not necessarily married, but we've had a long-term thing, and it's no longer working out, but we have a child. Well, for kids, divorce can be really especially tough. They can feel like they're caught in the middle. They struggle with the whole conflicting loyalties between parents. And this turmoil for them can lead to a lot of anxiety, maybe guilt. They might start, children often blame themselves for their parents breaking up, which it has nothing to do with the child. And they're going to worry about how they feel towards each parent and how those feelings are going to affect their parents. Now, If you're a parent here and you're going to go through this in no matter what type of capacity, you have to keep your lines of communication open with your children. You have to reassure your kids that, their feelings are valid, and you need to talk to them about their feelings. You have to create a lot of stability at this time, and that's going to make a world of difference for them, because no matter what you're going through, well, they're going to be going through it, and they're going to go through it a little bit differently than you are. Now, how do we deal with our friends or our family or maybe our coworkers, people who are going to start asking questions? Well, relationships with our family and our friends can also get really complicated. Loved ones might, they might pick sides. They're not going to, they might feel unsure of how to support both of you going through this process. And this is going to lead to a little bit of awkwardness, maybe tension with some of our friends and family. But have open conversations. Allow everyone to express their feelings, and encourage them to support you both. Don't support somebody just to pick a side. Now, that does change depending on why there was a dissolution of the relationship. But for the most part, try to encourage open conversations, right? It's all about creating a network of understanding during this time, which is going to be really difficult for everybody that's involved. Now, how do we do all this? How do we go through all this transitioning part? Now, when a relationship shifts, roles with families and friends and even our communities are going to have to evolve. It's not just marriages we're talking about here. It's any dynamic, friends, poly, BDSM, and more. All of the emotional responsibilities can change, and it's important to deal with these shifts with care. For example, a friend who used to belong to your, was your go-to confidant, they might find themselves in a whole different position now as your relationship changes. And if you understand that everyone involved is going to be navigating their own emotional, landscape at this point, that's going to help you give a little bit of empathy. It's not, the impact it's going to have it far and wide reaching. Each person, as these relationships break up, especially the longer the relationships have been together, each person that's involved or is touching that dynamic, their experience is going to be unique, and it's going to be shaped by the history and the dynamics of their relationships. And someone who's gone through something similar might react differently than someone who's facing these challenges for the first time. And you can acknowledge those things. And that way you're creating a really supportive environment for not only yourself, but everybody else. Now, lastly here, I want to kind of talk about this whole redefining our connections. As we grow and start to change, so do your relationships. And some may deepen during this time, and others might need to be reevaluated. And that's perfect opportunity to reflect on what truly matters to you and to nurture the relationships that are going to align with your values moving forward, right? You don't need to keep something in your life or someone in your life that's going to be so negative, it's going to continually bring you down. And if you take the time to understand these dynamics and the emotions tied to them, you can deal with these types of very sensitive emotional topics with a little bit more compassion for yourself. So this then brings me to, how do we disengage across different relationship types? Now, when it comes to navigating the whole tricky waters of a breakup or a divorce or anything that's really significant transition, one vital tool we can utilize is what I like to call the rules of disengagement. Now, these aren't just rigid regulations here. They're more like guidelines that kind of help us set clear boundaries and expectations, and that ensure that the process is as respectful and smooth as possible for everyone involved. Now, I realize sometimes that's not always going to be possible. Something's happened, we're angry, we're hurt, we're upset. That's fine. But think of these rules as a way to protect your emotional well-being while you're trying to figure stuff out. They provide a little bit of a framework for how to interact, maybe helping to minimize misunderstandings or prevent any additional or unnecessary conflict. Establishing some rules can pave the way for better interactions, or even when the emotions are really running high. So here are some things to really consider. Now, some of these practical rules can be applied across various types of relationship dynamics here. marriages to partnerships to friendships or even poly connections. First, establish communication guidelines. The first step in this process is really to agree how we're going to talk, how we're going to communicate. Now, this can include maybe setting preferences for communication methods, whether you're going to be meeting in person, maybe phone calls, texts, or even emails. The clearer the guidelines helps us reduce the chances of misinterpretation and can significantly decrease the tension that arises from any miscommunication. For example, maybe deciding that you'll only discuss important matters face-to-face can help keep the conversations a little bit more focused. And second, you need to define your emotional boundaries. And it's really important to talk about our emotional boundaries. These just aren't about what you're comfortable with. They're about creating this whole space where, everybody involved can express their feelings without feeling overwhelmed. Encourage discussions about how to support each other emotionally while maintaining your boundaries. You might decide that, certain topics like some past grievances or a new relationships are totally off limits, especially to the both of you, unless or until the moment you are at least ready to discuss them. This helps keep the focus on the healing rather than, reopening an old wound or trying to start a fight. Lastly, you want to avoid the blame game. And let's be honest here, it's really easy to fall into the trap of assigning blame when things go south. However, focusing on who's at fault, that's not going to lead to any progress here. It's going to lead to more resentment, more hurt feelings, and probably saying things we don't really mean. Instead, you need to emphasize this whole importance of looking forward rather than dwelling in the past. Cultivate this whole future-oriented mindset that allows you both to move on and creates this whole sense of closure. It's about understanding that while the past was part of the journey, it's not going to define what comes next, right? Now, maybe some hypotheticals here are going to be a little bit helpful. Imagine, two people in the middle of a divorce, they agree that the whole difficult conversation thing should only happen at somewhere neutral. I don't know, maybe they're going to go to a coffee shop or a park rather than the whole in the heat of the moment at home. A simple rule here prevents emotional escalations and helps people both feel safer discussing sensitive topics. You want to be sometimes on neutral ground. That way you're not worrying about where you can retreat to continue seething or thinking of ways to attack your partner. And consider a friendship that's shifting. If two people decide that they need some space, but they want to keep that whole friendship intact, they might agree to check in maybe only once a week. And this is a really good boundary that represents their individual needs while still maintaining some sort of connection. Or maybe, if we're looking at the whole poly side, maybe partners need to establish guidelines here for communicating about their new relationships or changes in the dynamics so that everyone feels a little bit more informed without feeling overwhelmed or sidelined. If you take some of these ideas, you implement some of these rules, you can navigate the whole transitions process a little bit more smoothly here. And this allows us to really gain a better understanding along the way. It's not just about us anymore. Maybe we can still find it in our hearts to understand somebody else. I know it's going to be difficult because each relationship or dynamic or whatever is going on is going to be different. But if you get stuck in the anger while you're trying to do your dissolution, the worse it's going to be. And the longer it's going to be carried out and the longer the hurt's going to go on. Now, what I'm saying here doesn't just help ease the emotional burden, but it opens up the door to healthier relationships in the future because you're not carrying all of this hurt and anger moving forward. And whether it's with your ex-partner or friends or somebody new, you want to, at some point, learn to start letting go and moving forward. Because if you stay stuck in the past, you're never going to find the healing you need to move on in the future. So if you're listening to this, maybe this doesn't directly affect you, but you know somebody who's going through this right now, how do we offer support? Well, when someone you do care about is kind of going through this tricky situation, whether their relationship just blew up or, they are getting a divorce or whatever it is in between, it's going to be challenging to know how to provide that support effectively. Now, being a good friend or an ally during this time can make the whole world of difference. So here's a little bit of practical advice how to be there for these people. First, listen without any judgment. Now, this is one of the most powerful ways to support someone in a transition, is just to simply listen, right? Encourage some active listening here. Create an environment for, your friends to share their feelings without any judgment. They're already going to be getting that. They're already going to be hurt. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to be sad. Create that space so they know they have somewhere to go and someone's just going to listen, right? Let them voice their thoughts and emotions freely. Just say something like, I'm here for you. Share what you're feeling. I'm not here to judge you, right? I'm just here to listen. This whole kind of validation helps them feel seen and heard during a time when they're going to feel maybe isolated, definitely overwhelmed, right? It's not about you, it's about them. Second, and this is kind of important, avoid taking any sides, right? You have to remember that. In a lot of these situations, people involved are going to feel conflicted about maybe their loyalties, and that's why it's really important to avoid trying to take a side or trash talking somebody else, no matter how tempting it might be. Right? The whole reason is because you don't know, in 3 weeks from now, maybe they work this out. Now you've said some stuff and your friend isn't going to forget it. And that's going to create some more awkward tension. Just stress the whole importance of that you're neutral and you're supporting for all parties involved. If you're close to both people, aim to support them equally. You can just say, hey, you know what? I'm here for the both of you. I want to help. I'm not here to create any tension. This allows, them to know you are trying to maintain the relationships, but reduce any risk of escalating the conflicts, especially maybe towards you, because they don't feel like you are choosing. If they ask you to choose, well, just kindly say, you're not here for that. You're just here to listen. You should be allowed to be friends with who you want and move from there. Finally, maybe encourage them to seek some sort of professional help. Sometimes family and friends, they're not enough, and that's perfectly okay. If you encourage your loved one to seek somebody out, whether it's therapy or counseling, that's going to be really beneficial. Let them know that, hey, reaching out isn't a sign of weakness, it's a big sign of strength. You could tell them, talking to a therapist, for example, could give you some more clarity and support right now than I'm able to do. And it's okay to do that. These are what we are trained in this field to do and offer the right tools and insight that sometimes our friends and family can't do. And we have to understand that's okay. We may not have the answers, and if we don't, you can tell them. And it gets tricky for us as we move forward, especially when we're the outside, because I've been there. I've been there with friends that have broken up, and, I've known them for long periods of time, and I've watched things fall apart, and it's hard. You want to choose a side, but, you got to really respect boundaries here. We have to respect each person's emotional space and how they're feeling. And this is important, especially when the dynamics shift. Now, whether it's romantic or whatever, all of these things are going to have a different impact, right? So you want to create these environments where everybody feels comfortable expressing how they feel. Let people articulate their needs. Let them know it's okay to set limits on what they're comfortable discussing. If you or them needs it, consider taking a break and talking about this maybe later on, or encourage them to talk to somebody else. It lets somebody know that, hey, you know what, your feelings are valid, but I may not be able to handle, I might not be equipped to deal with this, but, you're going to be in control of your journey, and I'm just here to support that. But you also got to have your own personal boundaries as well when something might go awry with your friends. You have to let people know, hey, that's fine, you're going through a tough time, but set some personal boundaries discussing the situation with them, right? This can manages how much they share and with whom, and this reduces the risk of this whole miscommunication or, unwanted advice. And when I say it that way, it might be a little bit confusing, but what I mean by that is you're also setting boundaries. What if you're the person going to your friends to let them know what happened? Maybe you just want to tell them you just need to talk. That's it. Nothing more. You don't need them to, tell you to go on some love cruise or some stuff like that, right? You just want somebody to listen. Other times, well, maybe you're just not ready to talk about what happened. Maybe you're not ready to give up the details. Or you're just sharing that with one person and you're going to ask them to keep that to themselves. All right? This allows you to maintain giving somebody support while respecting someone's privacy. And that's hugely important here. This allows you to help somebody cope with this whole difficult transition, but gives them the space to deal with these things on their terms and let them know that you're there to support them. It's about being present, validating someone's experience and reminding them that they're not alone, right? I want to kind of leave you with this whole perspective here now that might shift how you think about, like, you know, about divorce, or the dissolution of some sort of relationship. It is easy to view these moments as purely endings, and they're going to be filled with some pain and loss. But I want you to also see them instead as maybe a transition for an opportunity for growth or self-discovery or even a new beginning. Now, divorce or the end of a dynamic can be really difficult, but it can also serve as the whole catalyst for change here. It's a chance to redefine your identity, to reassess what you really want and need inside of your relationships. All of these changes can bring heartache, but they can bring new doors that can open for you. And those doors come with new experiences, new adventures, new opportunities that you may not have previously considered. You might find yourself exploring something new, like a hobby, or meeting new people, or going back to school. I don't know, taking a job in another state, pursuing your lifelong dream of becoming a disc jockey. I don't know, right? But all the things that you set aside, those passions that might come back, and now you have the time to do them. So while that path ahead may feel a little bit uncertain and a little bit cluttered, it can also be the road that leads you to a really beautiful and unexpected place. And for the rest of us, maybe, for all of you who are listening to this, maybe consider how you can be a better support system for those around you who are navigating similar situations. If you know somebody who's going through a breakup or a divorce and those dynamics are really shifting, maybe take a moment to reach out. Sometimes something simple as, I'm here for you no matter what, it's going to mean the world. Offering support doesn't always require you to know what to say. Just being there, listening, and validating someone's feelings and experiences really is going to be crucial to the whole healing process. So if you're navigating this right now on your own, if you are helping somebody get through this and you've got some really good tips or some things that worked or anything else maybe that I didn't mention, please feel free to drop some comments in the comments section. Let other people know about your experiences. I think it's going to be really valuable for everybody to hear. So I also want to let you know wherever I do have a book available, Tangled Desires, the intersection between BDSM and psychology, wherever you buy your ebooks, or the hard copy version is available too. On my website, I do now have a new tab under resources. I have created for the community something called the Partners Dynamic Checklist, Building Healthy and Intentional BDSM Relationships. That's a free download. You are more than welcome to grab that off my website for free. The link in the description to my website is already in the description, but I will put it again in the episode description for you. That's there for anybody to get. I think it's really quite important. And some upcoming stuff that I've got. So I am talking to the Spanko community. I've just begun that. I think it's really important. I've been getting a lot of questions from quite a few people around the world about the Spanko community. I've gotten some from Argentina, a couple out in Belgium, if I recall correctly. Quite a few people in the States, and I've had a great couple responses. So I promise I'm going to try to get that show done between now and the end of the year. I'm still wrapping up my details and information for an upcoming show on BDSM and the Middle East. I've been talking to people in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey. There's just quite a few people. It's a lot of information. It's really great information. I think it's going to give a different perspective to the world of what BDSM looks like in different countries, especially with those who, may have a different religious mindset as well, and where that influence kind of comes in. So all of these episodes are coming up, I do promise. If there is anything you'd like me to discuss, look into, talk about, or research, please feel free to reach out. You can message me. You can leave a message in the comment section. You can send me an email, the kink perspective altogether @gmail.com. I'm very happy to receive the emails that I do there. Or you can message me on FetLife. You can get a hold of me there. Instagram, Kink Perspective. Find me on Twitter, the Kink Perspective. All of these things, you can get a hold of me. Plenty of ways to reach out. So, again, let me know what you think about this show today, how maybe you've offered support to somebody in their difficult times, anything I may have missed, anything you think is vital, or if you have just a story, your own story of a relationship ending and how you're navigating it or how you navigated it, and you think it's important for the community to hear. Let us know in the comment section below. Until next time, everybody, be safe, stay kinky.